Hello and welcome to the Island Lamb. I'm Diane. This is episode 48, Island Hopping. And as you can see, I'm not on Block Island. I'm on the island of St. Thomas, which is part of three islands that make up the United States Virgin Islands. It's St. Thomas, St. John, and St. Croix. And on a clear day, which you can see today is not, you can see the outline of St. Croix off in the distance. And I chose to come to you today because this is a good backdrop. It is usually so sunny and so bright, which is wonderful, which is why we're here. But it does make for some difficult filming, and I'm enjoying this backdrop, and I hope this kind of works for you as well. So this whole tradition of coming to the U.S. Virgin Islands started a few years back on one of my significant birthdays. And I think I mentioned this before. My birthday is in February. I'm an Aquarius. And this is one of those significant birthdays. So I'm very happy to be here and hopefully slide into that birthday with joy and ease. We've talked a little bit about this past year, that it was a tough year. And it continued to be a tough year, I think, for most of us in the country. Some of you in other countries. It's been tricky. It's been tough. We had, a death in my family, as you know. We've had some concerns with some illness, which seems to be, it's going to all be okay, but it's been very challenging, and it continues to be challenging. So I am grateful, and I'm not taking anything for granted, including being able to be in this beautiful on this beautiful island, on this deck of our little sunflower cottage, and enjoy this beautiful time, being warm and enjoying simplicity. So I brought my knitting. There have been years when I have come here when I didn't bring my knitting, and I regretted it. I think that is so much a part of my everyday psyche, and it's so much a part of what keeps me grounded. And even when I'm on vacation and I have, beauty around me and I'm calm, I still enjoy the rhythm that knitting brings to me. I don't know how you feel about that, but I miss it terribly when I don't have it with me. Even if I'm waiting in a doctor's office or I'm on the ferry, I need it. Yes, I love to read, but I have found that knitting trumps reading, which is why I've really started listening to more books than holding a book in my hand. So the knitting that I brought with me, first I want to show you this adorable little bag, which is not really a knitting bag, but I bought it a few years ago at our favorite garden shop on the mainland. And if you look closely, it's the sky and all the planets and stars. And I picked up this little book, this little bag that goes with it from my tools. It's called Constellations. It's great for traveling. I can get quite a bit of knitting in it. And so what I do when I have to fly, I never fly with metal needles unless they're in my suitcase it's being checked. So I brought my chow goose with me. I brought some yarn. I brought a project that was already on my chow goose needles, and I packed that in my suitcase. In my little carry-on, I bring wooden needles and usually a pair of socks to knit on. And I do that because years past, I have worked on bigger projects, and I dropped my little rings and I dropped my needle, and the ball went flying down the aisle. And I think since 9/11, there's a lot less, that is not something you want to be doing. You don't want to be carrying metal needles and scissors and dropping things and reaching under people's seats. So I just try to keep it calm. I use my little dumpling bag or a small canvas bag, and I hook it on my water bottle, and I try to stay contained. I try to keep the skein in the bag, and those wooden needles, magic loop, and I just keep my elbows to myself, and I find that gets me through the flight calmly. I put a movie on, and I can knit pretty much a sock on the flight to St. Thomas. It's about a 3.5-hour flight. It's almost direct. We flew from Providence into Puerto Rico, and a 16-minute flight from Puerto Rico to St. Thomas. So we can get here relatively quickly. This year we were lucky we got out of New England before the storms hit. In years past, that was a challenge, but this year everything went smooth. So the project that I'm knitting on now, that I'm here, that I can use my chow goose, is the Gorgeous Orbits pattern. And because I don't have all my props with me and everything, I'm going to try to include all that in the show notes, but I'm also going to reference the Orbits is on Ravelry. I will tell you who the designer is. either in the show notes, or maybe I can put it underneath the screen. I don't know how it's all going to go with editing this. I might not be able to edit. I don't know. I didn't bring my laptop. I just brought my iPad and my phone. But this is the beautiful orbits. And you know, I showed you my knitting bag, the constellations. This is called orbits. The yarn I'm using is yarn that I got at the my favorite yarn shop on the mainland called Mermaid's Pearl. The blue that I'm using is Farmer's Daughter yarn, and I have used this yarn before when I made the mystery knit along, the Stephen West mystery knit along. It was the dark purple, and it had some spalina in it. And if you don't know what spalina is, it's a little bit of a metallic thread that runs through the yarn. So that's the navy. I don't think you can see the metallic right now. If the sun were out, it would spark up a little bit. It's not super metallic. It's very subtle. So I'm going to put my glasses on so I can tell you what's in here. So this is the wrapper. It's 1925 Farmer's Daughter Fibers Moon Sister. And it is 70% merino, 20% nylon, and 10% bronze stellina. There's 438 yards for a 100-gram ball. So great yardage. If I had to describe this yarn's feel, it feels sturdy. You know, I've been working in cashmeres lately, so it definitely feels a little bit more sturdy, a little bit more rustic, but certainly not like anything that would be a problem, at least on my skin. This is my main color. The contrasting color I'm using is absolutely gorgeous. You know, I've been working a little bit with the cashmere merino yarn from La Bien Amie, and this is the same cashmere yarn that I used in that green, the Daydreamer V-neck pattern that I made. That was an Andrea Mowry pattern, and I loved that yarn so much that I decided to use this as the contrasting yarn. So that's La Bien Amie, and it's cashmere merino. It's 75% merino wool, 15% cashmere. That's pretty good content for fingering weight. These are both fingering weight yarns, 10% nylon. The color is smoke. And by the way, the color of the navy is, and I think this is important because I talked about constellations, orbits. It's I've got dreams to remember. I've got dreams to remember. It's really dark. It's like a midnight, and mixed in with this gorgeous cashmere merino. Now this smoke is, I wouldn't say it's variegated, but it's definitely, what's the word I'm looking for? Tonal. So you see lighter gray with a medium gray kind of moving. You don't feel it when you're knitting with it, and I don't think you really see it either. So the pattern is top down, knit in the round. I love this neckline. It is a long tail cast on, so nothing special there, but it's a twisted rib on the purl stitch and the knit stitch, because remember, we're working in the round. So you're knitting in the back of the purl stitch, you're knitting in the back of the knit stitch, and I believe it's a 2x1, 1x1, I don't recall. Again, you'll be able to find this in the pattern. There are short rows in the back, as you can see. Now, about this pattern, and I wish I had it with me, but again, I'll try to include it. The pattern writer, I've watched her on Instagram, but I've never knit one of her patterns. I love the way this pattern is written. It's very size inclusive. It's very clear if you allow yourself to read all the content. I don't know about you, but I have a tendency to get ahead of myself sometimes. So I have to remind myself that all the information is there, as I just need to slow down, and I need to not assume that I know everything. And if you do that, you're going to be thrilled with this pattern. If you're a stickler for details, you're going to love the details in this pattern. I uploaded it into my Knit Companion, which I'm glad I did, because there's several different charts. So if you're not into charts, this is not probably going to be a good place for you to start working on charts, because you're dealing with charts and you're dealing with two colors. So I'll just say that. So the first chart is very simple. It's this beginning here. As you can see, there's nothing going on in between. So I was able to manage this chart without using any stitch markers. It was very intuitive. When I got to the second chart, which is going to start around here, you can see now that we've got some color work going on in between the two bigger charts. And so that is, the pattern is repeating every 18 stitches. So I made the decision to put on stitch markers every 18 stitches in the event that I got confused or I dropped a stitch or I made a mistake. I wouldn't have to rip back well over 300 stitches when you're at the widest part of the yoke. And I think that was not a bad idea. I bought these little tiny, and I love these little tiny markers, especially when you're on a small needle. So it was a 2 to cast on for the neck, and now I'm on a size 3 needle. I got a great gauge. You can see that's really gonna fit. I didn't want this oversized. I believe there's 4 to 6 inches of positive ease. I certainly didn't want 6 inches of positive ease. So I decided to make, with my bust measurement, the size large, and I'm glad I did. Now, when this blocks out, I'll get a little bit more room, but I wanted it to fit, especially in the yoke and shoulder area. So what was I gonna say about that? Yeah, so this morning I divided for the sleeve. And this is one of those opportunities where if you just allow yourself to read the pattern, you won't get into any trouble. But of course, I read ahead and I thought I knew what I was doing, and I had to rip out a little bit. So if you just follow the pattern, it's very simple. Because when you get to the sleeve, you're going to be staying in pattern. You're going to cast on 18 stitches underneath to, underneath the arm, and that's going to be in pattern. And now I'm back on track and I'm ready to work this body. I love this pattern. I highly recommend. And one of the things that is interesting about this pattern is what inspired the designer, and it's a collection, is a musician and some pieces of music, and I will include that as well. So this is the orbits. I used Farmer's Daughter, and I used La Bien-Aimée, fingering weight. I don't have my needle conversion in front of me, so I'll try to include that too. So a US 2 to a US 3. And even though it's wool, we've had cool mornings or we've had some overcast days that I have been able to work on this. I mentioned the Andrea Mowry Daydreamer. That was the green V-neck sweater that I was working on, that I wanted to have ready for Christmas Eve. I accomplished that goal. I wore it on Christmas Eve. I'll show that to you when I get home. I loved the process. I loved the yarn. I have to say, and it's me, it's not the designer, I'm not thrilled with the fit. And it's because it really wants to be off the shoulder. And my goal, when I envisioned myself wearing this, I saw a lacy little tee and I saw a V-neck. I didn't see a situation where it was going to be way over here. I didn't want my bra strap showing. I didn't want to see the straps of the camisole showing. So I ended up wearing it with a silk blouse that had a nice collar, and that covered the area, but the silk with the mohair and the cashmere just made those sleeves even more slippery. I don't think anybody noticed it except for me. I wore my white dressy winter white slacks. I had that white blouse on. My mother thought it looked gorgeous, but I wasn't comfortable in it. So when I get home, I'm going to take a look at maybe running some nylon. If you don't know this trick, there's some nylon thread that you can buy that you can weave into and tighten up. And I think if I tightened up the back, I think that's where the problem has occurred, is the back. I think the back is just too wide for me, and I'm broad-shouldered, you know that, and the rest of it fits me perfectly. It fits across the bust fine. I made it longer. It's supposed to be cropped. So the Daydreamer pattern is one that has challenged me in a few ways. It challenged me because it had the honeycomb stitch, which I'm comfortable with, but it was so much of it that there's a lot of lefts and a lot of rights. So it's definitely worth looking at the pattern. It looks beautiful on Andrea. You know, she's short-waisted, she's petite. I think for me, it was a lot of work. Expensive yarn for something that I'm not sure I'm going to wear often. So I just wanted to say that about that. So I know I'm probably going to finish the orbits before we leave the island. So I knew I needed to bring another project with me. So I believe it's a petite knit pattern. And again, I'm going to try to include all that for you. It's called the Daily Pullover. I think that Leslie from Leslie, A Friend to Knit With, has really popularized this pattern because she's made it several times. It's a V-neck, And I think it originally called, the pattern calls for a provisional cast on. It calls for short rows in the back, short row shaping. And Leslie has made it so many times that she came to the point where she's like, I don't bother with the provisional cast on anymore. And then a few episodes later, she's like, I've made it again, and I don't even bother with the short rows anymore. So I'm looking forward to going on to Ravelry and looking through Leslie's notes, because I would prefer not to use a provisional cast on if I don't have to. And I don't mind if the back of my sweater is a little low. I don't necessarily need short rows. So I'm going to review Leslie's previous episodes regarding the Daily Pullover. I'm going to look at her notes, and I'm going to cast that on at some point. I decided to make it in the Pearl Soho linen quill, and I know Leslie has done that as well. And if you recall, I used this to make the half and half shawl. I used it to make Andrea Maury's stone crop. I used it to make the little dumpling bag. I had a skein of it. I bought 2 more skeins. It's 3 skeins to make the Daily Pullover. It's fingering weight. You can see that linen. This is the colorway Oatmeal. And I think that's going to make a nice V-neck spring into winter, and then, spring into fall into winter, and winter into spring V-neck. Wear it alone, wear it with a tee underneath it, wear it with a turtleneck underneath it. So that's my plan. I don't want to work on my socks because I'm saving that to knit back on the plane with me, unless I can figure out a way to get some more sake on here. It's not, Amazon doesn't deliver to to residential homes, and we're renting from a resident. And so I may or may not, we'll see. We have some friends coming. I'm not sure if I want to send it to her and have her bring it. It's not going to be the end of the world. I'm going to save those socks if I have to. All right, what else did I wanted to tell you about? Well, Christmas went well, and New Year's went well. Again, like I said, we had some things going on in our family that made it challenging. But my husband and I made the best of it. I got to make some soups and some chilies and some slow roasted meats. And my goal was to resume my yoga and Pilates routine, which I finally have here. I have a yoga mat. I'm able to get up in the morning and get on the deck and do that. My husband and I love to walk here. It's very hilly. If you've been to the Virgin Islands, you know it's very hilly and mountainous. So we're working our glutes, and we're working the fronts of our legs, and that's been good for us. We'll head over to St. John in another week or so, spend a little time over there. Our friends will arrive, and so we'll have some quality time with them. Other things I wanted to mention to you, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the flora and fauna here. Right now behind me is a moringa tree, and some of you who like to use herbs medicinally might know about the moringa. I have not used it medicinally yet, but it grows wild all over this island. And because we've had quite a bit of rain, it's actually flowering. So that's what you're seeing behind me. There's bougainvillea all over the island, in fuchsia and light pink and orange. And we also have the frangipani shrub. I guess it's a shrub. And if you've ever used a floral perfume, it probably has frangipani in it. It's such a even if you find one of the flowers has fallen and it's on the road and you pick it up and you smell it, it's intoxicating. So that's growing wild. Orchids are growing wild over on St. John. We have some rain that usually comes through in the morning, in the evenings. In the morning, we usually have a rainbow. It's really a beautiful place to rest, to recharge, and to be hopeful, and let our brains just think about positivity instead of worry. And that brings me to one of the books that I did read, and my husband's reading right now. If you're on Instagram, you've probably seen her everywhere. Her name is Mel Robbins. I found out about her because Oprah did an interview with Mel regarding her second book, which is called Let Them. I think her first book was 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I hadn't read that. But the book Let Them resonated with me a little bit because I'm a bit of a type A personality. I like to be in control. I like to be in charge. I like to fix things. I'm a troubleshooter. And sometimes that can get me into trouble because sometimes when I'm talking to friends or family and they're just telling me something, it doesn't mean I have to engage in fix-it mode or make a suggestion mode, or try to control something mode. Does that sound familiar? If it does, you might want to read Let Them, or check out the interview with Oprah with Mel Robbins, because I think she's a bit more extreme than I am, or she was a bit more extreme than I am. But I have started to use the phrase, or the two words, let them, help me when I'm about to go into let's fix mode, or let's solve mode, or let's try to control mode. And I feel that it's had an impact on me. What else am I reading? I am reading the third book, and I thought it was going to be a trilogy, but it sounds like there may be two more coming. Again, I'm going to have to give you the author's name. I don't have it in front of me. But the third book is called Onyx Storm. It's fantasy. You've got to love dragons, and I do. I played Dungeons and Dragons back when I was in my early 20s. I've painted some dragons back when I was in my teen years. I love fantasy. I love castles. I love dragons. I like a good female protagonist. And in this series, our female protagonist's name is Violet, and she has two dragons that serve her, or she serves. So that's the other book I've been reading. And I think that's all I have for you right now. I will try to, maybe when I'm on St. John, pop in again. I'm going to put some footage in here. I don't know exactly what it's going to be yet. You know, what it looks like when you walk down the little path to our little cottage. Some footage of maybe some of those flowers that I mentioned. I hope that you have transitioned into 2025 with some peace and some joy, and that you're finding ways to take care of yourself, and you are surrounded by people who love you and respect you, and people you love and respect, because I think that's important, that we give our time to people who appreciate our time, and we don't spend too much time elsewhere. So thanks for joining me, and I hope I'll see you soon, and maybe from St. John. Bye-bye. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this beautiful sweater. This is the Orbits pattern designed by Rachel Isley, Illsley. And this is the fourth design in a series. And the designer found inspiration in a piece of piano music written by Ludovico Einaudi, Ludovico Ludovico Einaudi. And if you go onto YouTube and you look up this artist and you look up the piano piece music, you'll hear it's very moody, beautiful piano music, and that is what inspired her to make this design. I have so enjoyed knitting this. I've been holding the main color in my right hand and the contrasting color in my left hand, and you can see I've got a moody day and to knit this gorgeous pattern, thinking about the beautiful piece of music that inspired the designer and loving the yarn.